Hello, I'm Paul Perrello, and welcome to the Philly Factor. Well, my guest on this edition of the program was quoted recently, well, maybe a few years ago, in the Philadelphia Inquirer saying, if you have a vision, you can accomplish anything. Think about that. If you have a vision, you can accomplish anything. And Matthew Hoffman is a living testimonial to that statement. After spending 15 years in sports licensing, Matthew came up with an idea for a product that you yourself may own, maybe not just one, maybe two or three. Maybe your kids have one of these products in their room or in the basement. Bleacher Creatures is what we're talking about on this edition of the Philly Factor. It was sort of that light bulb moment that went off in Matthew's head that said, hey, this would make a great idea. It all started at a Phillies game when he wondered if Chase Utley what would Chase Utley look like if he was a Muppet? So Matthew Hoffman, President, CEO of Bleacher Creatures, joins us here on the program. Matthew, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So that aha moment, that light bulb moment, as I call it, is you're at a Phillies game.
Yeah.
And you're watching the Phillies play. Hopefully they were winning. I don't know if you remember the game, but you thought, what would Chase Utley look like as a Muppet?
Yeah, I mean, when you get to that point, there are other steps that get you there. So I had been working for Majestic Athletic, who was the official outfitter of Major League Baseball. So I'd go to a lot of ballparks, visiting different teams, working on their uniforms and their outfitting. More importantly, I became a father of three. So as I go to these ballparks, I want to bring something back for my kids.
Sure.
I'd go in the store, and honestly, the toys that they had in there of the mascots, they weren't made very well. So once you got past buying a t-shirt or a pair of socks or maybe a jersey for your kids, there wasn't anything else to get. So I was frustrated as a consumer that I couldn't get anything to connect my kids to these amazing brands, whether it was a great player or a great team. So yeah, then the light bulb went off of that Phillies game. It was August 2010.
Wow. And so you come up with this concept then to take a sports figure, primarily at first, and turn him into a plush figure. When you go to friends, potential investors that say, hey, I have this idea, what do they say? They look at you, Matthew, and they're like, yeah, right. Or were they pretty eager to hear your idea and jump on board?
Well, I never went to anybody really with the idea first.
Okay.
I had to, in some way, get a proof of concept. So the good news is when I was at that Phillies game, I had some of my friends with me. And about the second inning of the game, I'm looking at Chase Utley. I had really good seats with my old company, so I was really close. And I said, if Chase was a Muppet, what would he look like? And then I just sort of brainstormed during the game. The beauty of smartphones now is you can research online. I was curious what the toy industry was in the United States. It's about a $22 billion industry in the US alone. Take video games out, it's about $12 billion. Plush toys are a little over $1 billion.
Wow.
And when I researched, this is literally during the game. So I think they did win that day, but I was sort of half paying attention. A big part of the toy industry is licenses, right? So whether it's Star Wars or Marvel or Disney princesses, you know, key properties drive a lot of the business. And what I found is the professional sports leagues represent about 20% of all licensed product in the market in the United States. They represented less than 1% of toys. So the first thing was, as a consumer, I think there's a market here because my kids would want these. But then second, is there a big opportunity here? And there was, because there's over $1 billion to be had. So over the next month and a half, I worked with some friends who were designers. I researched online sourcing in China toy companies that could execute my vision. And you know, before I knew it, started going to investors. And once I had prototypes to show them, I think as soon as I showed them to everybody, people wanted to be on board.
So was Chase Utley one of those original prototypes?
Derek Jeter and Chase Utley were the two prototypes, yeah.
And so I'm sort of fascinated that do you have to go to Chase Utley and say, hey, Mr. Utley, I've come up with this idea for a plush figure in your likeness, and does he have to sign off on it, or is there another way that you sort of move the project forward?
Yeah, so I mean, as I was prototyping and starting development, they were just prototypes. I wasn't selling them, so I didn't need permission. At some point I did.
Right.
And that's where we have license agreements. So our first licensed partners, our licensors as they call them, was Major League Baseball Properties, and they are responsible for all the marks for all the teams. They represent the teams. So you get a license with them to make Phillies product, or even the Philly Fanatic. Major League Baseball Players Association is the union that represents the players, and they have the licensing rights for the players. So when it was time to get a deal done, I worked with them to have the right to do all the Major League Baseball players.
So then I assume at some point Chase Utley finally gets to see himself as a Bleacher Creature.
So Phillies have been amazing partners for us. They're actually our first customer we ever had that wrote a purchase order was the Phillies and their partner, which is Aramark, who run the stores. And the Phillies were still playing pretty well, coming off a World Series win. And our first year in, two things happened. Number one, somebody put a Chase Utley Bleacher Creature in his locker. So he had one there, and then we did a Roy Halladay one when he played for the Phillies, and Carlos Ruiz had that in his locker.
Okay.
So they definitely got to see it, and we've been lucky that athletes interact with our product, and they all get to see it over time.
So I guess, you know, you could be on a World Series team, you could be on a Super Bowl team, but an athlete, maybe a sign of really arriving in the sports arena is having a Bleacher Creature created in your likeness.
We think that's part of the process. We're pretty selective now on who we pick. And yeah, we get phone calls from agents all the time. I think the story I like to tell is probably 3 or 4 years ago. We were working with the Seattle Seahawks on their program. We were doing Russell Wilson and Marshawn Lynch, and we were set. And we got a call from an agent, and he said, one of my clients is Richard Sherman. He wants to be a Bleacher Creature. I said, I'm not familiar with Richard Sherman. It's true, but let me call the team and see what they think. And I called the buyer for the team. She said, oh, Richard's a good guy, we'll do it. We'll add Richard Sherman. And sure enough, they won the Super Bowl that year, and everybody knows who Richard Sherman is now.
Wow, fantastic. Matthew Hoffman is the president and CEO of Bleacher Creatures, and you can see the whole list of Bleacher Creatures online at their website, which is bleachercreatures.com. So how many Bleacher Creatures are out there today?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
I'm not really sure. I mean, I can tell you we've sold over $25 million worth of product over the last 6 years. That's our cost. So at retail, it's worth even more than that. We're proud of that number. I don't know. I don't know how many athletes we've done it. Maybe I should know that number.
Yeah.
We've been working on a checklist, but there are thousands of different versions of Bleacher Creatures out there, and there are collectors who collect them.
I want to get back to the collectors issue in a moment, but when you were sitting there in those great seats at Citizens Bank Park, watching that game when this light bulb went off, did you ever think, you know, 7 years later, $25 million in retail sales and counting, that this thing that you were toying around with at that time would amount into a multi-million-dollar industry?
I sort of did. I sort of did. I mean, the idea seemed to make sense to me. It's a hard business, and I can talk a little bit about, you know, the challenges of being a small toy company in an industry that's dominated by big companies.
Sure.
But I believed in the idea, and I've been lucky. I've been had good investors and partners, good licensed partners, and yeah, I believe we would do the sales. I did.
And now they can go to the website and purchase right off of bleachercreatures.com, but another part of this equation is that you are in many of the major retailers across the United States. Like you mentioned Target, and you know, it's so difficult fighting for shelf space.
Yes.
And you know, you may think you have the hottest, you know, new product in the market today, but everybody thinks they have the hottest new toy in the market today, and everybody's vying for the same amount of shelf space.
And actually, this shelf space theoretically is shrinking as e-commerce becomes bigger. Retail stores are having more and more challenges, and we just saw it over the last holiday season where Macy's is shutting doors, Kmart's here shutting doors, that the retail landscape is changing, so it's even harder to get shelf space, and you really need to be able to tell a story to grow.
Yep. You mentioned the collectors because I suspect that there's a collector for everything that's out there today. And so and this may be, of course, the collectors probably would drive this more than you, but those the Bleacher Creatures that first debuted, you know, a few years back, are they more sought after, more collectible because they're older and they're the original, as opposed to like the Pope that was introduced maybe a year or two ago? So how do you value, you know, I'm sure you don't do it, but maybe the collector's market really drives the value, like the Pope that we see there on the screen.
Yeah, I never built this business to be a collectible business. We built it for kids. What has been remarkable for us is half our customers that are end users are adults. So while we geared this for kids, adults buy these, and what we know about those adults, half of them own at least 3.
Okay.
So they're building a collection. I don't think, there are Bleacher Creatures that are sought after. We get an email at least once a week for Brett Kiesel, who was a player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had a great beard. He's retired. We don't make them anymore. And I think that's part of it. Once we retire it, I think people are looking for it and they like to collect it. My gut tells me, yeah, there'll be a collector market, but I think 20, 30 years from now, no matter what happens with our business, people say, remember Bleacher Creatures, and as they become rare, they'll be worth money.
We showed the Pope's Bleacher Creature on the screen a moment ago, and he's here on the table behind Batman. I don't know. I didn't set them up, so don't blame me. And there's a picture when the Pope, I guess, came to the United States, he was presented with his likeness. I mean, I'm sure sitting there at Citizens Bank Park, you never thought that that would ever occur. So what's it like for you, the president and CEO of this company, now to see the photo, the fact that the Pope has seen his own likeness?
Well, when people ask me what my favorite Bleacher Creature is, it is Pope Francis, because it made so many people happy. And the quick story was, it was a Thursday when the Pope arrived at JFK Airport. And there was a woman who worked for a Catholic school who had a Bleacher Creature, went to the airport and held it up for him. And there's video. What happened was, we were at the office, it was about 5:30, and my phone started ringing off the hook. And people I knew, like a friend of mine, Matt at the NBA, called me, did you do a Pope Bleacher Creature? And I said, why? He said, check the news. And live on TV, she held it up for the Pope. He blessed it. He took a selfie with it, and then he kept it, and he loved it. So for me, that's our best-selling Bleacher Creature we've ever had at this point. But to make the Pope happy and give the Pope a smile, I mean, no, I would never have imagined that, and that it feels like a blessing. It was really great.
Now, not to be outdone, I think just recently you announced or have debuted Jesus. He is a Bleacher Creature.
We have, yeah.
Yeah, and he's not going to be a guest anytime soon on the show, but I would like to present that to him if he was. But so are religious figures now, or is it just the Pope, and is it Jesus, or? No. Might there be the 12 apostles too?
No, we're expanding it. We call it our Preacher Creature section of our line.
Creature.
But yeah, we'll be at Toy Fair in a couple weeks, and we'll have Moses and Samson and Mary. Yeah, so we're going to extend that line, and it's great, and we love that we can connect with people in that way, faith-based, and Jesus has really become one of the bigger sellers, and I'm not surprised. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
one of the things is that they're very well done. I mean, they're made in a very durable fashion. Oftentimes, you invest money in a product, and a few weeks later they start to fall apart at the seams or whatever. These are very well done and very well made, and so that says a lot about the time and effort that goes into the production of these, and even the detail that goes into it, because you could look at Batman or the Pope or even Superman, and you have captured some essence of what the character or the person is really like.
Yeah, that's part of the secret sauce for us. I mean, first of all, our design team, we have terrific designers, and we spend a lot of time looking at faces. And until you do something like this, I think we take for granted how people look. But everything from the distance from somebody's eyes, the size of their nose, their mouth, we work really hard to replicate it. And then we have amazing partners overseas that run the factories for us. And they work really hard to try to get these as close to our vision that we do. There's a flip side to it too. I mean, one thing about the plush business, which I didn't know 6 years ago, it's a big industry, but it's a price point industry. People feel like they'll sell plush, but for the most part, when they get a stuffed animal, it's at a carnival or something like that, and they're cheaply made. It's really not good quality, and what we've done is we've tried to disrupt this category by making better product. And I think we talked about marketing before the show, but I think one of the things we need to continue doing is telling people why this is a $19.99 item. We think it's great quality, and the detail, as opposed to a carnival crane machine plush. Sure. They're totally different categories, but we continue to have to tell that story.
And the fact is they stand on their own, because right before we were going on the set, we were lining these guys up, and Matthew said, no, they stand up by their own. Most plush don't necessarily stand on their own. They're just floppy and fall to the side, and that's how they're designed to be like that.
Yeah, we call them plush figures, so it's a cross between a soft toy and an action figure. And what's great about it is, again, showing it. They do stand on their own. So if you have a man cave or in your office or on your bookshelf, you can put them there. But for a kid, you can play with them like a doll, right? They're great for selfies. They're perfect size, but they're cuddly too.
Yeah.
So we sort of hit all the factors that we wanted to hit for the product.
We saw a few of the Bleacher Creatures up on the screen while you were talking, and there was Ben Franklin, intimately connected to Philadelphia. We saw some of the flyers. We saw Allen Iverson. Did it seem logical for you to go with what you knew first in terms of, and even Rocky Balboa and Mr. T, all have Philadelphia connections. So was it a concerted effort to go with personalities that you knew because you're a Philly guy, so it was easier to tap into Ben Franklin or Rocky Balboa, or but then you don't want to necessarily not include the Chicago Cubs or Marvel Universe. So how do you decide who becomes or what becomes a Bleacher Creature?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the hardest parts of our job, because we're trying to figure out what the public wants and where we can do volume. And sometimes, like the Pope, it works out amazingly well, and sometimes you take a shot and it's a slow burn for interest. And I think as people start collecting more and more of these, maybe they'll take some of the secondary characters. But because it's all about passion, right?
Sure.
Our tagline is put your passion in play. So a lot of times it's from customers telling us, hey, we should do this or that. Other times we'll take a shot. We'll say, you know what, I'm from Philly, I love Rocky. I would want a Rocky one, let's get the license and do it. And then some, but a lot of times it's our retail partners that say, hey, we would love to do Mike Schmidt for the Phillies. And then we go out and secure the rights and do that.
Now, last year was the 40th anniversary of Rocky, the original Rocky movie, which won the Academy Award. And so you debuted not only the Rocky in the boxing shorts, but also Mr. T. And so it only makes sense that you tie in with an anniversary like that. You come out with the Rocky line. Do we know if Sylvester Stallone has his likeness in a Bleacher Creature?
We do. We actually, there's a woman this a couple months ago in LA who has his signature tattooed on her, and
wow.
She ran into Sylvester Stallone in LA and had the Bleacher Creature and got a picture of her with the Bleacher Creature and Sylvester Stallone, so he knows about it. Our goal is every time we do a real person, we'd like to get a picture with them, so we have a photo of like James Harden on the Rockets with his Bleacher Creature, and Anthony Mackie and Chris Helmworth from the Avenger movies with theirs. It's awesome. It's awesome when they see it and they love it, and that gives us a lot of happiness that we're making them happy.
Matthew, you're the face of Bleacher Creatures, but how many people...
Sorry to hear that.
Do you have your own Bleacher Creature? That's what I want to know. Do you have your own Bleacher Creature?
I don't. We did artwork. We did a ad campaign maybe 3-4 years ago and somebody drew up, but we've never made it, no.
But there are other people. Where I was going with this is that you're president and CEO of the company, but there are other people that work with you in this mission that you're on this journey that you're on.
Yeah, you never do this alone.
Right.
I've been really lucky. I have partners who have invested in the business with me and advised me on the business. I have great employees, great team, great licensors. Nothing's done alone. I watched a documentary on Warren Buffett. He didn't do that alone. So yeah, we have great people that work with us. I know you were going to ask earlier about customization, right?
Sure.
And doing your own. It's something we're working on. We're hopeful with 3D printing and inkjet printing that we'd be able to get templates that we could either make in the United States or at our factory overseas to put together a template. It's a long process. We've been working on it for 2 years. We're not there yet. The challenge is when you make something by hand, because these are all handcrafted.
Sure.
It's not a machine that makes these. It's not cheap. So right now we're probably at $100 retail to get a custom-made one of you, but we think people will pay for it.
Sure. How far out in advance are you? I mean, we're talking here February 2017, and you have this tremendous product line. But long term, I mean, are you looking, 6 months down the road, a year down the road, 5 years down the road? I mean, and I'm sure there are other products in the pipeline which you may or may not want to talk about. But you look at rolling out more and more product. The sky's the limit, I would think, in terms of who you could feature as a Bleacher Creature.
Yeah, the answer is yes. I mean, we're looking 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. Generally for retailers, sometimes they're working a year out. We know what the big film releases are for this year. Right. So, for instance, this year, the new Thor film will be big for us, Justice League, Guardians of the Galaxy, Wonder Woman. So we have all those. We've been developing those since last year. We get sneak peeks from the movie and work on those. We know what the movie schedules are for 2018, so we're already starting the planning for those. But then there are parts that you just don't know. You don't know if Joel Embiid is going to be as exciting as people thought for the Sixers, and we're working to launch that when the season starts next year. You don't know if the Cubs are going to win the World Series, so then once they win, we bring in more and develop more players. So it's moving, and then along with that, when it comes to technology, when you talk about marketing, it moves quickly.
Yeah.
So I had a meeting today with our marketing director, figuring out what we need to do over the next couple of weeks on the marketing side. It is a fast-moving world, and you do have to plan in the future. You have to sort of see where the trends are going, but you also have to be in the moment and react.
The other thing too is that a player like Chase Utley, to bring it back to how this all started, when he was a Philly, he's a Bleacher Creature. Now he's out in Los Angeles with the Dodgers. Is he a Dodger Bleacher Creature?
He's not. And I'm not sure if he's going to be on the Dodgers this season or not. I'm not sure. I love Chase, one of my favorite players. That's been one of the challenges when we started the business, when guys move. Peyton Manning was the best example. I mean, we launched Peyton Manning, and he was done being a Colt. Everybody thought he would retire a Colt. So we've been much more careful in regards to who we develop on teams. We try to pick superstars. They'll be there a long time. But I remember 2 Christmases ago, Sean McCoy gets traded, Nick Foles gets traded, Michael Carter-Williams got traded. It all happened.
Yeah.
Jimmy Rollins got traded all within like a month, and we're like, oh, we just made all these Bleacher Creatures. So we have to be really careful on who we do.
Yeah. Is there a wish list of must-gets or who you would really like to feature as a Bleacher Creature?
There are. We don't have the rights to do Michael Jordan. He's somebody that would be towards the top of my list. We've worked on it. It's been tough. We want to expand into music. We're actually just had a call this week with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because, would love to do like John Lennon and Jimi Hendrix and some, Taylor Swift. So on the music side, there are a lot we would like to do. But we've hit a lot of good ones. And Star Wars.
Star Wars.
We'd love to finalize a Star Wars deal.
Yeah. Toy Fair comes up in a few weeks here, and obviously you'll be there. It's sort of like, the mecca for the toy business. And so what might we expect to come out of Toy Fair this year from the folks at Bleacher Creatures?
Yeah, we're excited about Toy Fair. It's if you don't know, it's a trade show where all the major retailers in the United States come and see what's coming up for this year and next year. We'll have prototypes of some of the new movies coming out, like Guardians of the Galaxy, Wonder Woman, Justice League. We're debuting a new item, which I didn't bring here, called the Wham Block, which is a stackable cube version of a Bleacher Creature. It's really cool. We were at another trade show a couple weeks ago called the Sports Licensing Show, and people really liked it. And then we have our mystery clips, which is our blind packs. So they're smaller versions of Bleacher Creatures. They have a clip that you could use on your backpack, on your keychain, on your zip drive. And like we're launching with Target Batman collection. And the way it works is you get a package, you don't know which one you're going to get. You could get Batman, you could get the Joker, and each one's a mystery. So we're really excited about that too.
Now, as the president and CEO of Bleacher Creatures, chances are you have thousands and thousands of Bleacher Creatures in your office. How many do you own, Matt Hoffman? A few hundred, a few thousand?
Yeah, if you're talking about me personally, I have what I would consider maybe a dozen, and all of them are autographed.
Okay.
So that's sort of like my thing. If I can get them signed, I keep them. But my kids, which is really the count, they each have about 6 or 7 of them. I don't give them to them. They have to either earn it, pay for it themselves, or it has to be a gift that they ask for.
Interesting. How do you keep the lid on the excitement when you're ready to announce, a new Bleacher Creature? I mean, because it's got to be exciting if you were to land, like you said, Taylor Swift or John Lennon or whomever. How do you keep the lid on it as to wait for the official announcement on? Do you go home and tell the hey kids, here's a bit, guess who's coming? You don't
I don't even tell the kids. When you're a licensee for Marvel, DC Comics, the NFL, we're steward to their brand. I mean, they're giving us permission to use their marks.
Sure.
And I think they love it because we're giving a smile to their properties. But as a partner of theirs, we respect their launch dates for movies, so we sign confidentiality agreements. We really have to be careful, and we have to respect it. If we were in the same boat and we wanted to keep it a surprise, we'd want people to do the same thing for us.
Sure. Yeah. Again, bleachercreatures.com, that's where you could go and find out more information about Matthew's story. It's a real interesting story. There's an interesting video there, too, that shows how they sort of make the Bleacher Creatures, but it's really not. It's pretty funny, though, how they put everything in the pot and all of a sudden now pops one of the Bleacher Creatures. But again, it's a great website to visit. You could see, and I think when I was on there earlier, they have, as complete a list as possible through maybe through 2015, 2016, and it's a checklist. So do you wonder if there's somebody out there that has the majority of those Bleacher Creatures on that list?
We know there are people out there that do.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a local young lady named Carrie. She's a great supporter. Coincidentally, she's from Plymouth Meeting.
How about that?
She reached out to us like, I don't know, a year ago, and she said, hey, we're in your town, and we're collecting everyone. And she has a Twitter feed now. She gets pictures. She was with the Flyers, got pictures of each Flyer with their Bleacher Creature. And she has a huge collection. But we know there are customers that buy one of every one we make.
Yeah. Well,
unbelievable.
Where do you store them?
I
Where
don't
do you
know.
put them?
We have trouble finding room, but we appreciate it. We really appreciate their passion for it.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for your time. It's a fascinating story, and it goes back to that quote that I mentioned at the beginning. Because look, if you have a vision, you can accomplish anything, and that truer words. I mean, if anything is the takeaway from this, your story is inspirational. And there's a lesson to be learned here that if you really set your mind to it, you can really accomplish anything.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Matthew Hoffman, the president and CEO of Bleacher Creatures, with us here on this edition of the Philly Factor. Again, you go to bleachercreatures.com to find out more information and check out the checklist and all the great things that they have at bleachercreatures.com. Until the next time, for the Philly Factor, my name is Paul Perrello. Thanks so much for being with us.